A very warm welcome to everyone across the globe today. And today is a really exciting day. So it's the launch of something new, which I think is always a very enjoyable prospect. Before we do dive in though, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land upon which this university is situated, the Wallumattagal people of the Darug Nation, and pay our respects to the Darug people and the Wallumattagal clan, and to, of course, our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us today. This is our first workshop for 2021 and is part of our Alumni Professional Toolkit Series, which has been designed to support recent graduates as they embark on their career. In the changing world of work, we have opened the series up to all alumni and current students. I'm very delighted to have more than 200 alumni and students from across Australia and the globe registered to join us today. And the great thing for today is that the event will feature 3 HR professionals to share their insights and very deep expertise. As quipped by Lan Snell in the lead up to this event, this truly is the all-power panel. Following the presentations, we'll have Q&A, so please use the Q&A function through Zoom to ask any questions you'd like to ask our presenters, and of course vote for those questions you'd like answered. A recording of the webinar, along with a copy of the slides and links to the resources, will be sent to everyone after the event. Our first speaker is Alicia Clark. Alicia is the Head of Customer Insights and Strategy at SEEK. A very warm welcome to Alicia, and I'll now hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul, and hi everybody. I'm just going to share my screen. Hope this finds everyone well. I'm delighted to be here. So my name is Alicia Clark. I am from SEEK, and in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to cover across four things. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about the job market and what's been happening and the trends that we're seeing here at SEEK. I'm going to share with you some research around what our hirers are telling us they're looking for, with a real focus particularly on transferable skills. We'll then have a chat about determining the right fit for your next move. And finally, I'll direct you to some great resources that are available to you to help you in your next search. So it would be remiss of me not to just remind you all of SEEK. I'm hoping everyone is aware of SEEK. Our purpose is to help people live more productive and fulfilling working lives and to help organisations succeed. We've been around for over 20 years now. And in fact, today on our website, we have 189,055 job opportunities. So let's start with looking at some of the trends that we've been observing here at SEEK, and I'll start with one that's pretty well known, which is our unemployment rate. And certainly since March of this year, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, but what we have seen since March is a real sustained improvement in the national unemployment rate. So unemployment, certainly in the current situation that we're in, peaked back in June, sitting at 7.5%, and has just dropped back now to 5.1%. And certainly the improvement has occurred at a more rapid rate than what many had thought would happen, which is great, but it is great news. Certainly, the rebound has been swifter than what we've seen in other challenging times, for example, the GFC. Certainly a number of factors contributing to that, particularly the government intervention, which has helped minimise the impact on the slowdown of economic activity. Certainly we anticipate this rate of recovery will start to slow down as we return to levels of unemployment that are more normal that we saw in that pre-pandemic times. So now if we have a look at SEEK and the job ads that we have, certainly what we're seeing is the economic recovery is really fueling significant job ad growth. And we measure job ad growth using, we've created a job ad index, which is released and reported on a monthly basis. And it's a really quite a good, strong indicator of the health of the labour market and particularly demand for labour over time. Certainly what you can see here is that back in April 2020, times were very different. We were moving into our first of the, what for some of us has been several lockdowns. And what we saw was job ad volumes were down 64% year on year. But now here we are in May, and the results are quite different, up 164% year on year. And in fact, in April and May on Seek, we saw the highest ever volumes of job advertisements in the history of Seek. So a huge amount of activity that we're seeing. So when we talk to hirers or employers, we've been tracking them over time to get a sense of how hirers are feeling about their business. And it's probably not surprising to see that over time we're seeing greater and growing levels of optimism among hirers about the future of their business. So back in August of last year, around 64% were sitting at that optimistic level, and that's now currently grown to 78%. We can see that 4 in 10 hirers expect an increase in hiring activity over the next quarter. Now, the other side of that equation, though, of course, is candidates and what are they thinking and feeling. And what was interesting back in January when we surveyed candidates, we found that 1 in 3 had actually held back on a job change in the last year because of COVID. And the other trend that we're seeing, which is quite interesting, is that while we've got record levels of job advertisements, we are seeing that the average number of people applying for jobs is actually declined a little. And the reason for this, there are a few really. The first is that the sheer number of job ads now means that candidates have more choice than they've had in the past, and therefore there are fewer applicants per job advertisement. Of course, with border restrictions, it means that we have fewer workers. And the third thing is that we're certainly seeing that candidates are hesitant to change jobs in such uncertain times, so deferring that decision to change. So now what I'll talk a little bit about is around what are actually hirers looking for. So obviously when looking at candidates and considering roles, they are looking at a few things. They take into account one's experience, their qualifications, of course, but also skills. Skills are very important. And when we talk about skills, we can talk about technical skills, but also transferable skills, which are quite important. They're the transferable skills are the skills that you can take with you from job to job. And they're just as important regardless of what sort of role you're in, what level you're at, how much experience you have. So when we talk to candidates about what did they believe were the most important transferable skills to employers when they were applying for roles, these are the skills that they mentioned to us that they felt were the most important. So communication skills, initiative, teamwork and collaboration, time management, and then critical thinking and problem solving. And when we asked hirers the same question, so what's important to you when you're looking for candidates in terms of transferable skills? The good news is that the results were fairly well aligned. So both candidates and hirers, the number one transferable skill was around communication skills. But of course, in addition to that, what else was important to hirers is critical thinking and problem solving abilities, teamwork and collaboration, attention to detail, and initiative and self-motivation that the candidate brings to the roles. So certainly what we would say is when you're doing your next application, ensuring that along with talking about your qualifications and your experience, don't forget to mention your transferable skills and the skills that hirers value and find important to them. Now, the next thing I did want to also touch on was talking about roles and whether roles are a good fit. So the reality is job searching really is a two-way street. You want a mutually beneficial relationship between the employer and the employee. The fit needs to be just right. So certainly as a candidate, when you're thinking about your next opportunity, how do you determine if a role is a good fit? And there's really three things that you can focus on. The first is to start with the knowledge of yourself. Be clear about what's important to you so that then you can assess an organisation if it's going to be a good fit. So the sorts of things you would consider is what's important to you in terms of culture, work-life balance, flexible working arrangements, the physical office location, and so on. So having a really good idea of what's important to you will then help you assess whether an organisation is likely to be a good fit for you in the future. The second opportunity that you have to determine if a role is a good fit is the interview process itself. So remember again, it can be a two-way street. Observe how you and others are treated when you go to your interview, and absolutely make the most of the question times that you have available to ask questions about what is life like in that organisation, and ask detailed questions about the role that you're looking to be hired for, but also more broadly about the organisation itself, the philosophy, the work-life balance, the flexible policies, and so forth. And finally, don't forget to tap into the people that you already know who may work at that organisation. Have a conversation with them, even if it may have been a while since you've last spoken to them, to find out more about that organisation, the good, the bad, and everything else, to help you determine if that role is indeed going to be a good fit. Now, certainly at SEEK, we have a lot of resources available to you to help support you in your next move. I'm not going to talk through all of these, but I did just want to touch, give you a bit of a sense of the availability of the information that we've got. Everything from a deeper understanding of what your transferable skills are, guidance around cover letters, tailoring your resume, preparation for interviews, and so forth. So there is a lot of resources available to you on SEEK, particularly in our career advice section of our website, that hopefully will be helpful. So if I can leave you with a couple of thoughts on that, that is, the job market is very healthy at the moment. There is lots of opportunity. We can see that our applications per advertisement tends to be a little bit lower at the moment, which means that now is a good time to have a think about a change if that's what you'd like to do. Don't forget to mention your transferable skills when you're considering your next application. And remember that fit is a two-way street. It's as much about you having the opportunity to assess an organisation as they assess you. So on that, I will stop sharing and hand over to our next speaker.
Alicia, thank you very, very much for that. And it's something that I often see as well, is a lot of people thinking about themselves when it comes to that employer or prospect of new roles and new responsibilities and so on. And I think Alicia's point is a beautiful one to say, what is it that the organization is trying to solve for, and how can you potentially best fit yourself into that position of trying to solve and assist with problem solving for that company / organization. So enormous thank you, Alicia. We will get to some questions a touch later as well. Our second speaker for this afternoon is Erica Page. Erica has held senior management positions and is currently the Human Resources Director for Adecco Group. A very warm welcome to Erica.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. Yes, my name's Erica Page. I'm the HR Director for the Adecco Group, Australia and New Zealand. My topic today is actually on a very big topic that's close to all of our hearts, which is remote working. And I guarantee that many of us on this call are sitting at home for the call today. So let's get started. What I'd like to do is just to let you know that Adecco Group, we are a Fortune 500 company. Here in Australia, we have 5 business lines, and we focus on talent and technology solutions for our customers. At the end of the day, we're all got one goal, which is really about making the future of work for everyone. So let's get into remote work. It's here to stay, right? I think what happened during the pandemic, and we've all seen it, that workplaces now extend beyond the physical office. We've all got these digital tools so we can work wherever we are, whenever we want to, and we're seeing all of our organisations in this experimental mode of designing what it might look like in future. Most organisations are doing hybrid, some are doing more remote working, and others are coming back to the office. Whatever your situation in your workplace, guarantee it, you're going to be working from home or working remotely a lot more in the future. So I think for me, one of the biggest challenges that we should be asking is how can we ensure any remote work can work for everyone in the future. The Adecco group did some research late last year, and I pulled a bit of this out for this slide to show you, and I want to talk through it. But what I found was one size does not fit all. I could sit here as head of HR and design as many company policies as I want to support remote and flexible working. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to collaboration and having an agile framework. When I think about remote working, I encourage people to think about flexibility, maybe even some radical flexibility, but more importantly, personal accountability. And on the slide here, what you'll see is on the left-hand side, there are some shifts in personal situations that we saw, the negatives. No surprise, right? We saw lack of balance, no end to the workday, and loss of that human connection. We're connecting a lot, but not that in-person connection. And on the right-hand side, we saw things like extended work days, the pressure to perform when we're not together in a workplace, and also this increased amount of workload. So no surprises there of what the negatives are in terms of remote working. So what I wanted to share are some real practical tips, right, to working from home. I think that's what today's really all about. And what we did and what we're currently still doing is we've developed this new world working playbook. It's sort of like guiding principles, and it comes with tools and training and support guides, and it focuses around these 5 areas listed here in this diagram on the left, around hybrid working, you know, smart planning, wellness, agile, and delivering results. And the good news is, just this week, our global CEO has given us authority to share it externally. So I'll make sure you all on this call get a copy of our external version of this for your help. But at the end of the day, my message here, even though we've got these guiding principles, working remotely, I think we have to focus on a very deliberate way of approaching our workday and thinking about and planning our workday as individuals. And that's what I mean by personal accountability. And then the other thing I think that we found in the research was that organizations need to really have a trusting, agile, and very inclusive and empowered elements in their culture to allow people to design their remote working world, if you like. And I guess for me, what I've learned and when I observe others is empowering yourself to switch off. For those of you on the call with children, know that we have device time and you need to manage that. No different to working remotely and having screen time. So it makes perfect sense to manage that and have this new appreciation of time in our lives. So let's get into the tips. First tip, for good reason, right? Checking with yourself. How am I feeling today? And I think this has become, it was always important, right, to HR professionals and to organisations and helping people to manage their wellness at work. But it's actually gone beyond that now. And I think what I've spent a lot of my time doing is helping to educate. And I think if you can do one thing, it's about educating yourself on what total wellbeing means when you are working remotely and putting plans in place to manage it. You are the best person to manage your well-being. No one can really do it for you. So even when you think that you might have gone 3 months and you're fine, and then one day you just don't feel yourself, you can use and experiment with tools. Some people use exercise, some people it's more connection. I know organisations have a lot of events and you might want to attend those events. We do virtual yoga and mindfulness classes. We do things like coffee roulettes where you get to meet someone you didn't know before in another department. We've done doggy dating and music nights, and we keep doing these things. We haven't stopped, even though people are coming back to the office. We keep doing them because we are in a hybrid model where I work. The most important thing here too is if you're a manager of other people, like anything, you need to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help those around you. You know, care and performance are tightly linked. And I guess I'll just finish this tip with one of my favourite quotes, because resilience is talked about more and more than ever before. I love the quote, this one, that resilience is how you recharge and not about how you endure. So I would again stress that recharging is very important for performance and for working remotely. If we go to the next slide, look, this one is, I've joined a couple together here. This is about structure and boundaries and working smarter. And I guess for me, this is a lot about who's running your workday and are you building your workday in a way that is best for you? So this is, I tell people all the time, be kind to yourself and structure your week, your day, what makes sense for your role, your team, and getting all the elements in. I keep my Fridays pretty free. Try not to do much meeting on Friday. Wrap up the week, maybe focus more on my team, focus more on upskilling if I need to. During the whole week, keeping time between meetings. Do not ever jump from one virtual meeting to another if you can help it. Give yourself the breather between meetings. And one of the key things in a virtual world as well, obviously, is start and end. Having ritual, in particular to end the day, of course to start as well, but if you can have a ritual to end the day, going for a walk, having a coffee, whatever it is, because remember, we don't have the commute anymore. All of these things, I think, and you know, you'll come up with your own, it's all about to keep your energy level up, right? For me, it's about managing the emails, the meetings, the online, the offline, getting good at digital tools, even myself with Zoom, but really freeing your energy up so you can actually not only enjoy, but you can be really successful at what you're doing. For tip number 4, this is all about inclusive communications, right? I kind of combined a couple of things here, but really at the end of the day, when you are remotely located, asking yourself, what are you missing? Looking at the way you're communicating, the modes, the frequencies, especially if you're a manager of a team, it's far easier to have miscommunications when things are written or when you're not face-to-face and reading all the humanistic cues that people put off. So make sure that you be more humanistic and attentive in your communications, I would say. Of course, we've all probably had a situation where somebody in a virtual meeting seems a little quieter than normal, or maybe are not having their video on. So please, it's fine to call them afterwards and go, everything, checking. It's normal to do these sorts of things. So yeah, communications is up there in a virtual world. We've kind of got to get it more inclusive, and we've got to get it better than we did before. And then my last tip, again, it's about having a bit of fun, right? Joyful communication. I think I asked the question, am I feeling isolated? Is anyone around me feeling isolated? Because guess what? We're all human beings. We love connection. It keeps us alive, and it actually is the best thing for our wellness. So For me, it's making sure that you're part of a community, even though you might be virtual, but also you're helping to design the community. So in a HR role, people always look to HR to, oh, can you organise this? Can you do this? Oh, what if we do this? And I actually try to encourage and joyful connectors. Hey, why don't you take a lead on this? Why don't you set this up? So sharing authentic ways of working and being part of that community is really key. And part of that is this celebration of even the little wins and recognition, because you've heard the stories, people that witness recognition, and that it actually boosts their well-being even if they're not being recognised, right? So yeah, I challenge you to become a joyful connector at your organisation or wherever you are. And so just to wrap up, my 5 tips for you is to check in with yourself every day. Set some boundaries, some structure to work smarter, keep your energy levels up, and most importantly, focus on your communications and bringing joy and gratitude to a remote working world for yourself, but more importantly for everyone you're dealing with. And that is my 5 tips. Thank you for listening.
Lovely. Thank you immensely, Erica. And you have certainly brought some joy to my day with that presentation. And I think just as a meta theme for everyone here, to just make sure you're taking the time in your day, you're not beating yourself up too significantly. It's very easy to get into very negative headspace, etc. So I think those sage pieces of counsel will hold everyone in good stead moving forward. And Erica, thank you very sincerely for sharing those. And finally, folks, we have just a reminder in terms of submitting questions. We do have a couple of questions in, which are fantastic. But if there's anything that's sparked your imagination, do feel free to add into the Zoom Q&A functionality. And with that being said, I'd love to introduce our final speaker for today, who is Kerry Olefson. Kerry is a senior consultant with Lotus People and joins us now. So thank you, Kerry.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Paul. As mentioned, I'm a senior consultant at Lotus People. We're an award-winning office support recruitment agency based in Sydney. Today I'll be speaking about tactics and techniques to set yourself up and negotiate a promotion or a pay rise. This is a topic I've had to regularly speak to throughout my career, both as a recruiter, but also very much on the other side as an employee. It is a conversation that can definitely tend to be a little bit awkward and it can be confronting. However, I really do believe that if you do your research, prepare adequately, and approach the conversation with the right attitude, then you can really set yourself up to have a positive conversation with your employer. So for the purposes of today, I'll take you through a quick breakdown of how to prepare and approach a business case for a pay rise. I've broken it down into 5 separate parts for ease, and I'll now take you through each of the slides. Okay, so slide 1. The first step in this process is understanding your individual circumstances. This is all about educating yourself about the broader market that you sit in and any specific requirements your employer may have in being eligible for a pay rise. Understand your worth in the market. Conduct a market analysis to understand what your role is worth in the market. You can do this by conducting some research on comparative roles on job advertising websites such as Seek to determine what salaries other companies are offering for your role. When you do this, just ensure that you search the same city in which you work, as there is often a disparity in salary from city to city based on the cost of living. When you're networking, speak to your peers who are employed in the same position as you. This is a really great opportunity for you to get a further understanding of the greater picture and where your salary sits within your industry. And also take note of whether there is a scarcity of talent in the market for your particular role. And the reason I say this is if your skills and your role are in high demand, then that will really increase your worth in the market. Does your employer have requirements for a pay rise? It's important to understand from the get-go whether your employer has any specific criteria that needs to be met in order to justify a pay rise. This could be based on something like a performance or merit system, and is different to, for example, an across-the-board general increase to align with the yearly increase in the cost of living. So now we'll move on to slide 2. And this slide explores determining a justification for your pay rise. What knowledge, skills, work experience, traits, and values are most valuable to your employer? Consider your company's purpose, vision, core values, and their strategy. In understanding this, it's going to be really advantageous to ask yourself questions like, are there any niche skills and knowledge that are strongly valued by your company? What are your company's short-term and long-term goals, and what do they look like? Does the company forecast any upcoming significant challenges or potential roadblocks? What personality traits and values are highly regarded by your company and will contribute to a really positive organisational culture? The next is considering what value you bring to the company. This part of the process is really vital, as it will allow you to address the areas most valued by your employer in which you've been able to contribute to significantly. Write a list of all of your contributions to the company that align with the company's purpose, vision, core values, and strategy. This next point I think is really important, and that is keeping a work log of 3+ months that reflect the duties you've performed. So you have some really clear data to present to your employer to substantiate your request for a pay rise. The reason I think this is important is I think that it can be very easy in your day-to-day work when you're going through the motions to perhaps overlook or forget about any notable achievements. And by doing this, you'll be able to present some really clear documentary evidence to substantiate your request for a pay rise. So in particular, the work log should reflect any changes to your role and subsequent responsibilities, as well as an increase in value that your work has brought to the business. Some other things to turn your mind to within the context of considering how you may add relevant value to your business are questions like, when did you last contribute to significant positive change? Have you recently upskilled and taken on some higher duties that have really been valuable to the company? Have you gained a further qualification or undertaken some further study that has benefited the company? Or have you potentially demonstrated a really strong loyalty to the company and been in your role for a really significant period of time? We move on to slide 3, and this is where we put together all of the information from slides 1 and 2 in order to really formalise your strategy. Determine the salary you would like. This is pretty self-explanatory, but I think after doing your due research and preparation in slides 1 and 2 that you'll be able to comfortably and confidently arrive at a salary that you're happy with. Prepare a business case. So the first thing to consider with preparing a business case is the timing. I think timing is very much crucial in being able to identify what time would work best for the employer. Milestones such as your annual or monthly review can provide a natural timing and forum. However, there may be other events that can also act as a trigger for the discussion. Circumstances may include perhaps end of financial year, recent promotion or a variation in your role, and any recent recognition of significant professional achievements. I do think it's wise to give your employer a heads up that you wish to speak to them about a salary review. And the reason I say this is that it will give them an opportunity to prepare for the meeting and also frame the conversation. Make sure you've prepared key points of the conversation to cover and incorporate all of your findings from slides 1 and 2. Whilst you absolutely want to demonstrate your entitlement to a higher salary, you must also ensure that your points are really clear and focused. Succinct communication is always the most effective. Practice makes perfect. I would encourage you, once you've prepared your business case, to try a mock pitch with a partner or a friend, and that will allow you to kind of really familiarise yourself with your pitch. Repetition lets you fine-tune your presentation, especially when it can be a bit of an uncomfortable conversation, and will provide you with familiarity and the confidence on the day. And finally, a pay rise, I would encourage you to kind of approach that as you would an interview. Essentially, when you're having that conversation with your employer, you are asking them to invest in you. So I would approach it as you would an interview, and that is in a professional and also a structured way. And then we move on to slide 4, and this is all about executing your pitch. Back yourself, being properly prepared with a business case and doing all of the homework that's required should really give you confidence as you can speak to the relevant value that you bring to the company. Do your best to enter the discussion with a positive mindset. That's really important. I think that sometimes if employees perhaps may feel a little bit frustrated or disgruntled, it can set a negative tone in the conversation and also might cloud your judgment with being able to effectively negotiate. And that brings me to the next point, which is avoiding emotive language and sticking to your business case with data that substantiates your proposal. Really, really important to be able to approach the discussion professionally rather than personally, avoiding any emotive language and just sticking to your key points. Your proposal will definitely resonate that much more with your employer if you can clearly articulate your achievements and significant contributions rather than getting bogged down in the negatives and talking about how it's made you feel inadequate and how frustrated you are and what you've missed out on, etc. And finally, expressing an ongoing loyalty to the company usually is well received by the employer. It's a good opportunity, I think, to share that you're really wanting to, continue to grow with the company. And finally, moving to slide 5, and this slide explores any additional considerations. Prepare for resistance or objections. In an ideal world, your employer is going to be completely on board with everything you have to say, but the reality is that you may receive some resistance or objections. So I think it's really important to be able to turn your mind to any potential objections and have some responses prepared so that you are able to practice these and overcome them on the spot. An objection could look like, we don't have room in the budget to give you a pay rise. It's not up to me to make that decision. If you receive a no, don't be disheartened by it. Rather be confident in being able to ask what you need to do to get a pay rise. You don't have anything to lose in the conversation and everything to gain. At the very least, you'll be able to walk away knowing that your employer is aware of where you stand, and you'll also have a greater understanding of what steps need to be taken to perhaps negotiate a pay rise in the future. Brings me to my next point, be prepared to negotiate. Consider what your ultimate goal looks like, but also have a think about any fallback options that you can use to negotiate. Determine the extent in which you're willing to negotiate and just make sure that you keep within those boundaries. You don't want to bend so far one way that you end up compromising your self-worth because you won't be happy with the outcome. It is important to remember that a no now may not mean a no forever. If it's a no for now, be prepared to negotiate a specific date to revisit this and review your salary, as timing is key, as previously mentioned. This could include considering the possibility of the request for a pay rise being an ongoing series of conversations. And finally, pursue higher duties in the absence of a monetary pay rise. After having the conversation with your employer, and if they conclude that they are unfortunately unable to offer you a pay rise at this given time, you may wish to consider putting your hand up to undertake some higher duties instead. This will demonstrate an eagerness to continually grow professionally and also prove your worth. It will place you in a better position to be able to negotiate a pay rise in future. And that brings me to the end of my content. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that this has proved useful.
Kerry, thank you very, very much for that wonderful presentation. And I think another key point for the folks here today is it's just a beautiful description if it is the monetary side of things that you're looking to maximize. Kerry's points are wonderful, and I think they equally hold true for other things that might be of huge value to you that may not necessarily be monetary as well. So whether that's more flexible hours, whether that's being able to work in slightly different ways from that which you have historically, et cetera, these techniques and so on that Kerry has outlined for us are beautiful descriptions of how to negotiate some aspects of that conversation. So big thank you to Kerry. We do have some great questions lined up from alumni. So if you haven't already, please do feel free to post some questions in that Q&A function. And now I will turn to those questions and very much invite our panel members to tackle some of those as best we can in the 15 or so minutes we do have remaining. So we may actually just go top to tail, at least for the start. We've got a great question from Caroline, who has asked, I think in reference to some of the presentation earlier in terms of job advertisements, what types of jobs do we see that are getting advertised more and more at the moment? Is it specific to certain industries and so on? And I think that's also then the question that Andrew has picked up on a little bit further down, but very much welcome the thoughts of all of you in your respective lines of business. How are you seeing that across the board / in respective sectors also?
Sure, I'm happy to kick off. Certainly at SEEK what we're seeing is growth across the board. In particular though, the really high levels of growth have been in 3 areas. One is around trades, so what we call trades and services. So think mechanics, hairdressers, builders and so forth. So definite growth in trades and services. Hospitality is a second area we're seeing significant growth. And the third area, which may not be surprising, is healthcare. When we look down, if we focus specifically around professional services, we are seeing growth in professional services, but it's not at the same rate of growth that we've seen in those other areas I've just mentioned. Particularly in professional services, so where we're seeing growth is in mining, resources and energy, in HR and talent acquisition, which is not surprising given the growth in job ads that we're seeing. And then also in what we call ICT, so roles in relation to IT, developers, software engineers, and also project management. So they're the areas that we're seeing particularly strong levels of growth at the moment.
Thank you. And Kerry and Erica, how are you seeing the market also in your respective works?
I can comment. I actually can echo everything you just said, Alicia. In my role, we have more open roles than we have ever had in the time I've had this job. And I've been in the company for seven years doing this role. So it's unprecedented. And all of those roles are clearly the same sectors, the same areas, and it is across the board, right? The one area I think that it's going to be harder longer term is around technology, IT and technology, because we just don't have the digital skills and the technology is changing so rapidly. So I think, technology is going to be an area of growth for some time. Yeah, but seeing the same thing.
Wonderful. And Kerry, what are you seeing from your side?
Yeah, I very much agree with Alicia and Erica. I'm seeing the same amount of growth in those industries and in those specific roles across the board as well, both temporary, fixed term and permanent. There's just been an immense surge of roles coming in and being advertised, but particularly I think because we focus on office support recruitment, there's been a lot of opportunities within HR and talent acquisition and a lot of movement at the moment.
Perfect. No, thank you very much for sharing that. And there's a great question here, which is actually a really difficult question. So I'm very happy to let you folks try and answer this. And it is in relation to selection criteria and maybe some of the comments that we've probably all touched on in terms of soft skills, transferability of skills, etc., relative then to very strictly meeting the criteria that might be a little bit more disciplined or harder skills. And how do you folks think about balancing or allowing a candidate to balance those skills and their descriptions of what they can bring to an organization? What are some tips, tricks, or thoughts around that topic?
I can just a small comment there. One of the things that we're constantly looking for is mindset as well. So the mindset that an individual comes to the table with, because skills you can train and you can train people up, but I guess what is their mindset? And that curiosity, that agility, that growth mindset. But most importantly, I think the mindset that employers are looking for is people that are willing to be agile and learn and upskill. It's a lifelong upskilling, micro skilling and so forth. So I think the skilling piece and showing and demonstrating that you are on a journey of upskilling is critical to bring to the table in those conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same for you, Kerry?
Yeah, I very much agree with that, Erica. I think that with all of the changes that have occurred during COVID and still continue to occur, that the ability to truly pivot to change has been something that's incredibly important. A lot of the clients that I work with, in terms of those soft skills, being able to be truly adaptable, someone that can run into change rather than run away from it, and is able to take it in their stride and just hit the ground running with it.
Perfect. And I guess that's what I've seen as well. A lot of people, and more people starting to describe these transferable skills, which is wonderful. But I can definitely implore everyone to actually then think about explaining how you've been resilient and explaining how you communicate well and explaining how you lead projects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because it's very much one thing to say, I am resilient, and we can all say we are resilient, but then some people might have fought in wars, or some people might have a certain number of children at home that they're balancing on a regular basis, et cetera, et cetera. So that explanation of some of those transferable skills, I think, is really important. Cover letter, CV, when you're actually in that interview stage, I think just going to that level of description, I think, can be very, very useful as well. And Alicia, what are your thoughts? Because I know you kicked us off down that road of transferable skills also.
100%. So telling a story and providing those real life examples, and those examples that may not even necessarily be drawing exactly on experiences in the workplace, but could be experience you've had from a volunteer perspective, for example. So yeah, it's really important to sort of give yourself that time to stop and reflect on the skills that you have and the examples that you've had in your broader life, not just your working life, to demonstrate those skills.
Yeah, I'd love that. Sorry, jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Elyssia, I agree with that. I think one piece of advice I commonly tell candidates that I work with is they may have a concern about reading the position description detail, particularly the key selection criteria, and saying, well, I don't meet X, Y, Z. But when you take the time to actually explore that in detail and talk about things in the greater context, not just in the role they're in now, but in a volunteering capacity or even in a personal life, they've displayed leadership skills. It's just often they're able to meet a lot more than what it looks like on paper.
No, well said. And a really difficult question that probably oftentimes gets skipped over, but I would love to get your perspectives on it. And it's one from Ken, which briefly touches on detecting signs of burnout, but maybe just more broadly, your experiences over the last 12 months in not just burnout, but maybe seeing morale of different team members come and go and keeping motivation and just keeping the energy high when it needs to be in your respective teams. Love to just pick your brains slightly on that one if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, sure. Burnout's a real thing, actually, everyone, because I think people sometimes think it's not a real thing. So for me, I think, if people's energy levels are down, if they're feeling they're not enjoying their role, if they're anxious, I think you can Google the signs of burnout and stress, but at the end of the day, I think it's about recognizing them in yourself and actually talking to somebody. Most companies have EAP providers, and doing all the things that we talked about in the wellness check and manage it. But I think when you're if you've ever met somebody that is in that burnout space, it's hard to help yourself when you're there. So I think it's all about getting some support. So it's okay to talk about it. Yeah, that's what I would say, is reach out. If you think you've got burnout, I would have a conversation.
Love it. And Alicia and Kerry, in your teams, and even just some of the great ideas that were shared before by Erica in terms of just those coffees or connecting with pets and so on, have you been in any beautiful examples of that type of activity, or have you seen or heard of any that you think could be useful for folks?
Certainly within my own team, regularity is really important. So having a consistent check-in. We always meet first at 9:30 on a Monday morning, and the rule of that check-in is not to talk about work. It's actually to talk about anything but work. It's 20 minutes, and it just allows us to connect with each other and reflect on the weekend that was and what the week ahead looks like. So that's worked well for us, and it's been very consistent for the last 15 months.
Love that. And Kerry, any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, definitely. I sit within a very kind of high-performing team. We're all perfectionists. We all work long hours, and I think the probably one of the takeaways is just the importance of setting clear boundaries. You can be so dedicated to your job and hardworking, but it is okay to give yourself the permission to leave on time. You don't need to beat yourself into the ground and stay really late. So we kind of lean on each other in that regard, and we'll often step in and say, all right, you're walking out the door now, please don't stay later. So I think definitely leaning on your peers and having those transparent conversations, but also being able to set those clear boundaries and put self-care first.
Love it. Okay.
Paul, sorry, can I just say one more thing? I think that there is a real big, with COVID over the last 18 months, people don't go on as many holidays. So taking a break, and, we've become a country of, we only want to go on holidays when we go somewhere. So taking a break and having a staycation is really important as well, I think.
I love it. And we actually have a whole heap of other questions, but I might just go for one last quick question for everyone, because I do want to be respectful of everyone's time and wrap up at 1. So maybe I might just leave it with something that I guess could be top of mind for a lot of people. And that is just in terms of extra tips, tricks in relation to promotion/career progression conversations. The reference has been made in terms of public and not-for-profit sectors, perhaps in addition to just your standard maybe private organization. But maybe if we leave it there, then if you could share any final thoughts on that particular topic.
Trying to think.
Oh, you gave some great ones.
I know. I think my brain there's nothing left.
I think one thing Kerry kind of was implying is around that confidence piece. I just see a lot of people, just not necessarily having the confidence or having gone through the practice or the research or understanding how much they're worth in the market with tools like Seek and so on. And just preparing for it like any other conversation where you are well prepared, etc. I think that's something I've seen a lot of people just say that they want to do something, but then very unwilling to commit much time or resource or preparation to that. So that's just some of the observation that I would make in terms of a lot of students who I've been working with. But Erica or Elyssia, you may have some additional thoughts.
The thing that I would say, I don't know if it's a tip or not, but staying quite open-minded, because if you're so set on a particular role or a particular company or something, sometimes you might find something that takes you down another path, or you might take a job that leads to something else. So sometimes you can get an adjacency role that actually gets your foot in the door, build some more skills to eventually get that job. So I think having a little bit of open-mindedness and not being too set on what you want, that agility, I think, is really important. Yeah.
Perhaps another tip I think is also important to think about is to not compare yourself to your other colleagues, because I think we can tend to get stuck in our heads a bit with comparing our journeys to others, and that's never positive. It's always negative, and it's quite self-destructive. So, and I think that can often be the trigger for having a conversation about pay rise as well. My colleague's earning this much and I'm only earning this much. We're all on different journeys. We all have different values and traits and skills that we bring. So kind of honing on your own journey.
And I would just round out and say, you are your own advocate. You are your best advocate. You know you best. No one else is going to do this for you. This is the your time to shine, and have that confidence in yourself, because no one else is going to talk or knows you as well as you know yourself, in terms of what you can bring and the value that you bring.
Love it. Really well said. And thank you very, very sincerely to all of our speakers today on behalf of our alumni and the team at Macquarie Business School. I just can't thank you all enough for your insightful presentations, and then just your insights in terms of the Q&A sessions as well. I would also like to thank both Josh and Ramya for being wonderful in doing a huge amount of the legwork to give us this wonderful opportunity to have this conversation. And just finally, I would like to thank everyone who joined us today, of which there are around about 100 people. You should all very much give yourself a pat on the back, because a lot of people don't spend the time investing enough, I think, in these topics, and just taking that time out in their day to think about themselves, their career, and also then the impact and those around us, who obviously are a part of our career journey, both at a professional level and then by definition at a personal type level as well. So a huge thank you to everyone for today. That does conclude us, and we really look forward to seeing everyone at the next workshop coming up shortly. So thank you once again.